Hey guys, welcome to Project Metal Music's YouTube channel with your host El Young, and we are here with Neil from Caustic Waves.
Hello,
Welcome, mate.
how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Yeah, cool, cool. So, Neil, could you introduce yourself and what you do within Caustic Waves?
Yeah, so my name is Neil Thomas, and I'm a one-man band releasing music under the name of Caustic Waves. So I do everything. So I do guitar, bass, vocals. I do all the production and mixing myself as well. Um, I released an EP in 2023 called Full Circle, and I'm just about to release my new album tomorrow, which is called Echoes.
Cool, cool. Well, got a comment from Aussie straight away. It's saying, "Hey Neil."
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's dive into some questions. As a kid, what were you listening to?
So Michael Jackson was probably my first big musical love when I was about 6 or 7. I was mad into Michael Jackson. Um, I remember my gran took me and my brother into town one day, and I don't think I'd ever even heard of him, but we ended up getting the Bad album on cassette, and we went straight home and listened to it and loved it, and that was me kind of hooked on music. I started learning guitar around about that same sort of time when I was about 6 or 7. And then I was getting quite into kind of pop music uh, and like dance music and stuff like that. And then when I was 12, I discovered Aerosmith, and then that led to Nirvana, and then that led to Silverchair, and then I started getting into all sorts of great bands.
Cool, cool, cool. Apart from your grandmother, who else got you into sort of like listening to music? Was it your parents, sibling, or was it the journey of self discovery?
Yeah, I mean, my mum is very musical, so she sings in the RSNO choir. So she's been in the choir for I think 40 years or something like that. So she's very musical. My brother as well was quite an influence on, as I said, when I got into the likes of Aerosmith. It was him that turned me on to them, and he was getting into bands like Metallica and Guns N' Roses around about then as well. So he kind of pointed me in that direction. Yeah.
Cool, cool. So, out of all the bands that you've listened to over the years, who was your sort of like main influence, or was there several influences to sort of like made you think, yeah, I want to do this. I want to get up on stage and actually perform.
I guess there's probably a few bands. So I mentioned Silverchair. They were like my absolute favorite band when I was like 15 years old. I made my own website, and actually I did some work on their own official website back then as well. But around about that time, that's when I was kind of starting to get kind of reasonably proficient at playing guitar and bass, and was playing in various bedroom bands with some of my friends. And it was like Silverchair, Nirvana, those kind of bands that we were wanting to be like. And I think it was that sort of, so we're talking kind of late 90s here. So it was that sort of late 90s, early noughties kind of period where a lot of my kind of favorite bands kind of came out of. And a lot of those bands were kind of influences for what I now do with Caustic Waves. So as I say, Silverchair, and I remember reading an interview with Daniel Johns from Silverchair, and he listed quite a few bands that I then went and checked out. And I think he mentioned Helmet, Korn, Tool, and I think maybe Deftones as well. And I went and checked all of them out, and I loved them all. So those are all kind of influences. I think Far as well were another one of my main influences, and Incubus. I saw Deftones back in 1997 with Far supporting, and they immediately became one of my favorite bands. And I've been following Jonah Matranga's the singer from Far. I've been following kind of what he's done in various other projects over the years. He's probably one of my main kind of vocal influences.
Cool, cool. Right, Lisaboo, all the way from Canada, she asks, "How did you choose the band's name?"
Okay. So I was originally going to release. So I I wrote and recorded the first EP, Full Circle. I wrote it just before lockdown, and I started recording it during lockdown. And I was originally going to release it under my own name, Neil Thomas, and it was a kind of last minute decision to kind of come up with a band name, because there is actually another singer songwriter in England somewhere called Neil Thomas. So I wanted to avoid confusion with him, but I also wanted to avoid people kind of having any sort of preconceived notions of what it would sound like. You know, normally when you see someone's name, you probably assume it's going to be like acoustic singer songwriter kind of stuff, and that's not what I was doing at all. So I wanted to come up with a band name, and I guess I went through a fairly big list of potential names. I wanted a name that kind of sort of reflected the sound of the music. So I guess the music's a little bit heavy in places. You know, it's kind of distorted guitars, kind of loud rock songs. But then the vocals are kind of melodic. You know, I don't really do any screaming vocals or anything like that. So I wanted to have this kind of Caustic being kind of harsh, heavy kind of sound, Waves being a bit more gentle. So just thought the kind of combination of those two kind of represented the music that I make.
Cool. Thank you for that, Lisa. So, were you in any bands before you decided to create Caustic Waves?
Yeah. So as I said, I was in kind of bedroom bands in my late teens, and I think it was when I was about 20, 21 or so. I was in my first kind of proper band, first gigging band, and that was a band called Keitel. And I played guitar in that band and did a couple of harmonies as well, but it was mostly playing guitar. And I was in that band for a few years until I went away to America to work for a couple of years. So that was when that kind of ended. Then when I came back from America, I was in a band with one of my friends from school, Robbie. His band was called the Chinaskis. So I was with the Chinaskis, I think from about 2010 until 2017, I think was when it finished. So Robbie, the kind of band leader, kind of main songwriter, guitarist, and singer, he emigrated to America at the start of 2017. So that was kind of the end of that band. I played bass and I did harmonies in that band. And actually, the end of that band was kind of what spurred me on to do Caustic Waves. So we started recording an album with the Chinaskis. I think it was about 2015 we started recording it, and we had recorded most of it. We did all the drums and all the lead vocals and things. I think most of the guitars, but it was kind of sitting unfinished at the time when the band finished, when he emigrated, and I kind of wanted to kind of finish it off, because we'd put all this work into it, and it was kind of 60-70% done. So I kind of resurrected the Pro Tools sessions and kind of got to work on it without telling my friend Robbie that he was that I was working on it. So I kind of kept it a secret for as long as I could. So I recorded all of my harmonies. I got Chris, the other guitarist who also sings, I got him to record his harmonies. So I kind of took the album as far as I could, and then I kind of handed it over to Robbie saying, I've been busy, can you go and finish this now? And then he then worked with a producer over there and finished off the album, and it came out a couple of years after that. But it was that kind of process of kind of working on that album, and just like I co-produced the album. I did quite a lot of work, like the kind of editing work and things like that on the album, and that kind of reignited my interest in kind of doing recording. So I wanted to do another kind of recording project. And that's where I started writing songs, and then that's kind of I started recording what eventually became the first Caustic Waves EP.
Cool. So could you tell us a little bit about the first EP of Caustic Waves?
Yeah, so as I say, it was kind of an excuse for a recording project. So I wrote 6 songs. I kind of demoed, did kind of rough demos of them first, and then it was like just before lockdown started, I was getting kind of geared up to record it. And then the last song I wrote for the EP was Invisible Enemy, which was about those kind of early, the first few weeks or month or so of lockdown when it was all very uncertain and nobody knew what was happening. So that was basically what I did during lockdown, was working away on this EP. I think I started it, so it would have been like April 2020 was when I started recording it. And I was kind of slowly working away on it. I think it took me about a year and a half end to end. because I work full time. I've got I've got kids. I'm married. I've got family life. So I was kind of very slowly kind of working away on it, and I did all the production and mixing myself as well, which is not something I've really done all that much before, the mixing side of things. Like I've done recording things before. I actually did just a bit of a tangent here. I did a project in 2010 where every single week I recorded a song, just a kind of instrumental song, but it was a whole different pile of genres and ideas and things. So that kind of got my skills at, like using Pro Tools a bit better. So, and I managed to keep it up for the whole year. I did 52 tracks. But in terms of the kind of mixing, like it was very basic. It was kind of setting the levels, maybe a little bit of EQ and things like that, but nothing too crazy. Whereas when I started recording the EP, I really wanted to try and improve my skills and kind of learn a bit more. So I did lots of kind of online video courses and things like that. Watched a pile of YouTube videos and just to try and get familiar with like the techniques and how you're supposed to kind of do mixing properly. So quite a lot of the time of that 18 months was kind of just pushing my skills and kind of learning and things. So yeah, I think I finished that in late 21, and then that's when I kind of started thinking about how I'm going to release this thing. I've actually, before then, I'd never had music on streaming services or anything, and I had no idea how to do that. And as I said, I come up with this band name, Caustic Waves. I had no idea how to kind of brand myself or anything, so it was quite a learning curve, kind of figuring out how to do that. And then instead of releasing the EP up front, I kind of sort of staggered it. So I wanted to try and like build an online fan base kind of thing. So I released the first song, Regenerate, in March 2022. And then throughout the rest of the year up to March 23 was when I actually finally released the whole 6-track EP. I kind of did like a series of single releases. And that really helped because I think if I just put out the EP, straight away, not that many people would have heard it. Whereas having that kind of year to kind of do the kind of promotion and try and build a bit of a following, that really helped. So that when I finally did release the EP, I had a bit of a following and, people actually heard it.
Cool. So, following on to your new album, which is coming out tomorrow, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the album is called Echoes. As I say, it was kind of a continuation of the EP. So in terms of the kind of timeline, I released the EP in March 2023, and then not long after that, I kind of started demoing songs for the album. I think before then, I'd been kind of writing bits and pieces. So during that year, as I mentioned, when I was kind of doing the promotion and stuff, I was kind of jamming out riffs and ideas and stuff, but I hadn't really done many actual, putting them together into songs, the kind of thing. So I had a fair kind of pile of ideas to kind of work with to start with, and I ended up writing and recording a bunch of demos. I think I ended up with 22 songs in the end. So what I did was I split the 22 songs into two, and I focused on the first 11, and that's what has now become the album Echoes. And I am now planning on going back to those other 11 songs, and that's going to be the next album.
Cool. So have you released any singles from the album, or are you planning on to?
Yeah, so I've released 4 singles from the album. So I think the first one was Quicksand, which was released in June. So I've been doing a sort of monthly release kind of thing. So I had Quicksand, and then I think it was Playing with Fire, Compromised, and then Escape Your Fate was the last one, which was last month, and then tomorrow the full album comes out.
Cool.
But it's been good to kind of get the kind of response from putting the singles out, because it had been quite a long time since the EP came out until the next single came out. So it was good to sort of try and get interest again and kind of build up a bit of a momentum leading up to the album release.
Cool. So you said that you're going to be concentrating on the second half of the songs that you wrote.
Yeah.
Would those be sort of like a continuation on from Echoes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much to two albums that are related. As I say, I wrote the 22 songs kind of in the same period. I think at one point I considered recording all of them at once, but I decided that would be madness and it would end me. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly musically, it's certainly a kind of continuation of what the songs and echoes are. I've not written the lyrics yet, so but I've got the melodies and the songs kind of fairly well fleshed out. I'm now going to go back and write the lyrics, so the lyrics will probably be inspired by some of the events of the last couple of years and things like that.
Yeah, cool. Cool. We've got a question from Aussie Queen of the Rose. What is your favourite song of the band?
My favourite Caustic Waves song?
Yeah.
Okay. I think at the moment it's a song from the new album called Spotlights, which is it's a little bit of a departure from the other songs on the album. Yeah, like when I was writing songs for the album, I was trying to kind of branch out a little bit because I think one of the bits of feedback I had on the EP was that the songs were kind of in the same kind of vein, kind of similar tempos, similar structures and things. So I wanted to try and branch out a little bit on some of the songs. And Spotlights is a good example of that. It's quite epic. I think it's the longest song I've written and recorded for Caustic Waves. So I think it's just under 6 minutes, I think, or 5.5 minutes or something like that. And it's very kind of Tool influenced, I would say. But it starts off quite quiet, and then there's a kind of loud chorus, and then there's a kind of extended middle section where it kind of goes instrumental, and there's all sorts of crazy polyrhythms going on. So lots of like the guitar doing different stuff in the drums and the bass, and then it kind of all comes back together. So that was like doing the drums for that one was really a challenge, because trying to get the dynamics right as the middle section kind of starts to happen and then kind of builds back up into the kind of ending bit, getting the dynamics right for that was it took me quite a long time to get that right. But I think it's definitely one of my favorite songs in the album.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that, Ozzy. Right, we have a question from Lisaboo. She asks, "What is your favorite part about being a musician?"
I think my favorite part is really just kind of seeing the songs come together. Like I love the whole recording process. As I say, my process is usually I'm always kind of picking up a guitar and just kind of seeing what happens. And I've got a wee recorder that I've always got nearby, so I'm always kind of reaching for that and just kind of jamming out ideas and stuff. And sometimes songs will just happen straight away, but a lot of the time I have just ideas and bits and pieces, and then it's a bit of a puzzle to try and think, well, that bit would fit well with this, and kind of fleshing them out into kind of to rough songs. And then at that point, I would normally kind of demo the song with guitar and drums, and kind of work out where the melody is going to go. And then it's the fleshing out of the songs that I love doing as well, particularly on this album, probably more so than the EP. Like adding all the little guitar bits and I guess the vocal harmonies are another big part of what I do as well. I've always been a big fan of harmonies. I loved Queen when I was growing up. We had Queen Greatest Hits 2 in the car on cassette. And I remember we were driving around France one summer, and that was just on constantly, and I just loved the harmonies that they do. So anytime I'm recording music now, I'm always trying to layer as many harmonies as I can, which is time consuming, but it's like I love the effect it gets when you've got a big stack of vocals. So yeah, I think just that sort of creative kind of writing and recording process is my favorite thing about doing it. What I'm doing now, the whole releasing, promotion, all that kind of stuff, it's fun in its own way. It's quite challenging trying to keep up with what to do social media wise and all that. But I would say at the moment I'm really looking forward to getting back to the writing and recording part of it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so sort of like carrying on from sort of like being part of the being a musician. So sort of like when you come up with ideas, what comes sort of like, what ideas are those? Sort of like, what is your sort of like, what, well, how can I put this? What is your sort of like process of actually writing a song? What comes first? Is it sort of like a riff or melody or harmony or sort of like a bass riff or?
Yeah, it's usually guitar riffs. I mean, most of the songs I write on guitar, but occasionally I'll write something on bass. I think there's one song on the album, the second track called "Artificial Lies." It starts off with a drum beat, and I remember I think I was working and I went downstairs into the kitchen and I just had this kind of beat that kind of came into my head, and I kind of immediately came back upstairs and just kind of like tapped it out, and then that kind of became the sort of the hook of the song. So that doesn't happen that often. It's usually guitar. I'll kind of pick up a guitar and just jam around and see what happens. And as I say it, I then kind of piece the ideas into a song. And then the way I always do it, I get the sort of song fleshed out enough that I can record a demo of it. And I might, while I'm doing that, I might kind of move sections around to try and get the sort of flow of the song kind of going, verse, chorus, middle section, that all that kind of stuff. And then the bass usually comes later, and the melody is the kind of main thing I then try and nail down. And I always I usually record the melody of the song, but just on guitar, just I've kind of got something to kind of listen to, and then I would write the lyrics to the melodies that I've kind of sketched out. That's usually the case. It doesn't happen often where I've kind of got lyrics kind of sitting there. I normally have the kind of melody kind of fleshed out, and I'm trying to write, fit the lyrics around the melody that I've written. And then the harmonies and stuff, they usually come much later. Usually when I'm doing the harmonies, I've got a fairly clear idea of what they should sound like. But sometimes it takes a bit of trial and error to kind of to sort of feel out what works and what range I can hit as well. Sometimes when I'm doing harmonies, I'm hitting higher than where the main melody is, and it's kind of pushing my vocal range to the absolute limit, and sometimes down the way as well. Sometimes I end up doing lower octaves and kind of, I've got a naturally kind of high singing voice, so doing the kind of lower stuff is always kind of a challenge.
Yeah, I know the vocals can be stretched out if you try and hit those sort of like high notes.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult to do like the growl or the sort of like the lower end of the vocal range.
Yeah, I guess that's one kind of advantage of like, as I say, I've recorded everything at home, literally over there, and because of that, it means I can kind of take my time as well. So like if I'm trying to do like vocal bits that are kind of harder, I can kind of get as good a take as possible, but if it's not working, I can come back to it the next day or the next week. Whereas if I was paying to go into a studio and trying to I've got 7 days to get everything nailed, I'd be a lot more pressure, I think. And I actually made the mistake of when I was recording the first EP, I wanted to try and get all the vocals done so I could kind of just get quick progress. So I booked a week off of work, and then I set up at home to get all the vocals recorded. And I think after about the second or third day, my voice was just absolutely shredded. Like I just could do it. And I think I persevered on, and I got through what I was trying to get recorded. And then when I was kind of listening back and kind of piecing it together, it just didn't sound great at all. So I ended up kind of going back and re-recording a lot of it that I wasn't kind of happy with, which is just good that I've got the ability to do that, as I say, kind of recording everything in my home studio.
Yeah, I know this when if you do go into the a proper sort of like professional sort of like studio, it can put like a lot of pressure on you.
Absolutely.
To actually get everything nailed down in one take type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas working at home, I can kind of take my time, and if a take doesn't sound good, I can practice and until it sounds right. Rather than having a producer watching the clock.
Yeah. It's I know it can be become expensive to actually hire a professional studio. professional recording studio. You know, Lisaboo has just said, "Thank you. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be creative."
Yeah, as I say, I love the creative process. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah, true. So, after you said that you were going to sort of like concentrate on the second half of the songs that you've written already
Yeah.
to put out another album. Are you sort of like still writing any new material for the like follow up?
Yeah, I've been, as I say, I've always got a guitar sitting here, and I'm always picking up and coming up with ideas. So I'm now kind of coming up with songs that are going to be on the next album. So I do want to kind of follow through with the 11 songs that I had kind of written with along with the batch of songs that went on to Echoes. So I do want to get them recorded and get them done. But I've got maybe 5 or 6 kind of rough ideas for songs kind of beyond that. So. I mean, who knows when I'll actually get to them? As I say, it's quite a lot of kind of slow process as I'm kind of working through the recording. But at the moment, I'm kind of planning on starting recording, hopefully by the end of the year, if not the start of next year. And I expect it will probably take me the same amount of time as it did for Echoes. So I don't know if I mentioned it. I started recording the album in like January 24, and it was about a year and a couple of months. I think it was at the kind of maybe March or so this year was when I was kind of starting to get to the end of it and starting doing mixing. So I'll probably do the same thing next year. I'll probably spend most of next year kind of recording. So it'll probably be out at some time in 2027. So as the songs I'm demoing or the songs I'm kind of coming up with now will probably be 28 or who knows. So I've got loads ahead of me.
Yeah, cool. So, let me see. Lisaboo has just asked a question. What instruments can you play, and are there any you would like to learn?
So I play guitar and bass are my kind of main instruments, and as also I sing as well. I can play piano, not that well. I think I did up to grade 2 or so of piano. I can play well enough that if I'm trying to record, like, 'cause there's a lot of synth and things like that on the album, but most of the time I'm kind of roughly playing it and then kind of fixing it in the recording software, moving it and fixing mistakes and stuff. So I would quite like to try and get a bit better at piano. One thing, my son is actually learning saxophone just now. He's been learning for about the last year or so, and I'd love to have a go. I've never really actually tried to have a go at it, but he's starting to get really good at it. I got him. I wouldn't say he played in the album. It's more like I sampled him playing a note on the saxophone, and then I kind of arranged it. But yeah, on the opening track, like the very first kind of riff, I wanted to just kind of get the saxophone on there just to sort of thicken up the sound. So it's quite kind of subtle. Like you won't really hear it unless you're kind of listening for it. But if you take it out, and you can kind of notice the difference to the sort of texture that it gives. But yeah, I'd love to be able to play saxophone and actually, or I'd love to get my son to, once he's kind of good enough to actually play a proper part in it. Maybe on the next album we'll see how proficient he gets.
Cool. All right. We've got a question from Ozzy, and she asks, "Any plans in the future for vinyl?"
Oh, so vinyl is something I would love to do, and I did look into it. There's a couple of problems. So the album is quite long. Well, I mean, by today's standards, I mean it's 45 minutes, which it in my mind isn't that long. Most of the albums that I love, like kind of back in the day, most of those albums were 45 minutes easily, if not 50, 60, 70 minutes. But obviously these days, the albums are generally shorter. They're kind of they're usually 9-10 tracks at most, and they're usually kind of under the 40-minute mark. There's a kind of technical limitation on how long you can have on each side of vinyl without the quality starting to get really bad. So the album sits at 45 minutes, I think. But then when you split it into the two sides, I think it's just beyond what you could fit onto vinyl without the sound being really bad. So I considered, could I drop a song, or could I do, a two LP set kind of thing? But it's very expensive to produce, and I'd love to do it, but I think at the moment, given my kind of current sort of level of fan base, I probably couldn't realistically afford to do it. But who knows? Maybe someday I'll come back to it. But
yeah, I was going to say it'll be all down to finances and how many people who actually want it as well.
Yeah. Well, there's a few companies that do kind of on demand. There's a company, I think they're called Elastic Stage, that I looked into that do on demand. So if I'd managed to sort out that problem with the length of the vinyl, that would be an option. But I think even on demand, it works out quite expensive. Like I think it was maybe 30, 35 pounds I'd have to charge for each record, and I wouldn't be comfortable charging people that. I'm not a big band that can kind of demand that kind of money. I'd want to be trying to keep it 20 or ideally under. But there's obviously a huge resurgence in vinyl collecting, and there's a huge demand for vinyl, and because of that, you can charge more for the vinyl production.
It's over the last 5-6 years now. It was like pre-COVID when all the vinyl started to have a major resurgence.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say over the last 10 years, actually, when it comes to think of it, it's been having like a massive resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, I have a vinyl record player sitting there, and I've got a fairly kind of modest collection of vinyl. It's not something I listen to all that often, if I'm honest. Like, I'd love to actually have time to kind of sit down and listen to it more, because I do like the whole kind of ritual of getting the album out, putting it on, looking at the liner notes, all that kind of stuff that people kind of, that's the argument for why vinyl's a good medium. I do really like that, but as I say, most of the time in the evenings when I've got free time, I'm working and making music, so I don't really get all that much free time to sit down and listen to vinyl. Most of the time when I'm listening to music, it's when I'm working or if I'm out running or something. And yeah, I can't bring a vinyl record out when I'm out running.
Yeah, true.
One thing I did do for this album, though, was I got a limited number of cassettes made, which I'm really excited about, because I don't know, they've made maybe not quite as much as vinyl, but they've made a bit of a resurgence in recent years as a sort of collectible thing. And also, not many people will actually have cassette players. I do know a few people that do, and quite a few people have ordered them already. But just as a bit of a collectible kind of thing, I quite like the idea of that. So I ended up putting quite a lot of effort into the kind of booklet that comes with the cassette. So it's got all the lyrics and stuff printed into the booklet, whereas the Digipack CD doesn't. I'm hoping the cassettes will go down well once people get them.
Cool. Yeah, it would. At the minute, I'm looking at my hi-fi system. It's got like record deck, CD, and cassette players. So I've got the full range type of thing. Like you said, there is like a sort of like resurgence into the sort of like cassette.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully those would sell out for you.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I got a fairly small number of them made, so I'm hopeful I'll manage to shift them all.
Yeah, true. So speaking of like sort of like merchandise, have you got any other merchandise such as T-shirts, stuff like that?
Yeah, this is a fairly recent thing for me. Just so it was Bandcamp Friday. Was it last week or the week before? Was it last week?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. So I have, for the very first time, I had some T-shirts made. So again, for me, I'm in a bit of an awkward position because I'm a one-man band, and at the moment I'm not gigging or anything. It's just a recording project. I can't really get a big batch of T-shirts made up. Which I would normally sell at gigs and things. I can't really do that. So I've been kind of swithering about doing t-shirts for ages because, people have asked me, over the last couple of years since I've been doing this Caustic Waves, people have been asking me about t-shirts and things. But recently I found there's a company called Tone Threads, which I've used, that print the t-shirts on demand, which is great for me. When I've got, a kind of reasonably online fan base, I've got, fans all over the world that would be really tricky for me to post out to. But the good thing about them is they'll produce them like locally in the country. I think that there's a few different places where they kind of produce them and ship them. But like America's a bit of a problem, obviously, with the tariffs and things going on at the moment. People are struggling to make merch here and ship it out over there. So the fact that somebody in America can order a t-shirt, it'll get printed in America and then posted within America without any bother with tariffs, that was ideal for me. So on my Bandcamp, there's a whole range of designs, some based around the artwork for the singles, and there's quite a lot of designs based around the logo as well. So yeah, go to Bandcamp and see if there's one you like.
Cool. Is there any sort of like other merchandise, such as like pins, caps, stuff like that, or are you just concentrating on the t-shirts?
There's t-shirts, there's hoodies, that's all I've got for now. I've got a couple of wee I got some stickers and some badges made up just to sort of celebrate the album release. So anybody that orders a cassette or a CD will get some stickers and a badge thrown in for free as well.
Cool. So, guys in the chat, if you've got any questions, please ask away. So, I know you are a one-man band, but is there any plans in the future about touring?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've thought about for a while, trying to get a band together. People have been asking me for pretty much ever since I started this, are you going to get a band together and play the songs live? And I've been kind of sort of swithering about it and debating about it for a while. I think it probably will happen soon. It's really just a matter of time for me, as in making time to do it. Because as I say, life for me is quite busy with work and family life, and then doing the recording stuff as well, trying to make more time to then put a band together, rehearsing and kind of getting gig ready. It's a bit of a, it's a commitment. But I would love to do it because, in my previous bands, we gigged all the time, with the Chaskies, we were gigging all the time around Glasgow. And I loved that kind of that live experience of, just playing songs and having fun. So I'm hoping at some point I'll just finally not admit defeat, but just finally just sit down and say, okay, let's do it. I've got a few friends that are kind of interested that I think I'd call upon to make it happen. So hopefully in between recording the new album and I'll find some time to make the band a reality and start doing some gigs, even just if it's gigs around the Glasgow area, and maybe not necessarily touring just yet, but we'll see what happens.
Cool. So if you did get the time, the financial backing, the band together, would you sort of like do a whole UK tour, possibly go over into Europe or Canada or down in Australia?
I mean, I'd probably start local first, and get some Glasgow gigs under my belt. I mean, I'd love to, play around the UK, because I follow a lot of bands on social media, and a lot of bands that are from here and other bands around the UK, and I'm always I always get really jealous when I see these bands going out off on tour and playing places around the country and having great fun. I do kind of get jealous of that. So if it got to the point where I had a band together and we were kind of tight enough and we had some opportunities to do some touring, maybe around the UK. I mean, I think Europe and America is maybe a dream, but whether that'll ever happen or not, I doubt it. But who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Right, we've got a question from Lisaboo. She asks, is there an artist, musician you would like, who would you, God, I can't speak today, who you would love to collaborate with?
Yeah, I think the first name that comes to mind was Jonah Matranga, who I mentioned earlier, the singer from the band Far, and and various other projects. Like he's done, I think, One Line Drawing, Gratitudes, New End Original. Like he was kind of one of my main kind of vocal heroes, really. And I'd love to get. He's got an amazing voice. I'd love to get him involved. I'm fairly tempted to see if I can make it happen. To be honest, because like I think he is quite. He does quite a lot of collaborations with other musicians and stuff. So he may be open to the idea. So maybe for the next album, I'll see if I can make it happen. Who knows?
Cool. Thank you for that, Lisa. So, where can people find you on social media just to sort of like keep up to date with what's happening with Caustic Waves?
Everywhere is the answer. I'm on too many platforms. If you go to causticwaves.com, you can that takes you to my Linktree, and you can get links to all my social media. But I'm at Caustic Waves on Instagram and X, and I'm quite active in Threads as well, which I quite enjoy using. Somewhat for just talking about my band, and other just for random thoughts. And Facebook, I'm on that as well, and YouTube, got quite a lot of videos on YouTube to check out. Whenever I was kind of that year I was talking about, where I was kind of doing the sort of promotion leading up to the EP release, I did a whole pile of vocal covers. I think there's about 15 or something like that I've done now, of just various songs of bands that I love doing. I've done a Far song, I've done a Finch, Glassjaw, a Perfect Circle, a whole pile of bands. So yeah, go to my YouTube channel and check them out. I just actually put one out at the start of the week there by Biffy Clyro, who are one of my another big influence for me whenever I was kind of first starting out. So they're not from Glasgow, they're from Ayrshire, so they're kind of near here. But I always kind of thought of them as a local band. Like I was quite aware of them really early on, because my friend Robbie, who I was in the Chinaskis with, he went to uni with Simon, the singer frontman of Biffy Clyro. So I've been a big fan of them, and since way back before their first album was out. So the song I did this week was off their first album, Just Boy. So you can find that on my YouTube channel and check it out.
Cool. Guys, like I said, if you've got any questions, please ask away. We're going to be starting to wrap things up in the next 5-10 minutes or so. Any advice for people who want to become a musician, whether for their own personal enjoyment, or possibly going down into the commercial route?
I think just give it a go. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, where for me, it's very much, as I kind of said earlier, it's very much about the love of making music. So if you have an interest in writing songs, just give it a go. I mean, it might, certainly for me, it took quite a long time for me to actually get to the point where I could write songs that I was kind of happy with. I look back at some of the songs I did 20 odd years ago when I was kind of first starting and cringe, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, or the happier you kind of get with your own kind of output, I guess. But I guess when you say for commercial things, do you mean like making a career out of being a musician, or
it's sort of like recording music and sort of like releasing it, as either on sort of like a platform, whether it be Spotify, Apple, stuff like that, or possibly selling, possibly gigging and selling that to shows?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of like recording and releasing music, it's never been easier to record and release music than it is these days. I mean, when I was kind of first starting making music, 20 odd years ago, the technology for recording music on a computer was really it was really expensive or kind of inaccessible to the likes of me. So I mean, I had like my friend I had like an 8-track digital recorder kind of thing that I borrowed, and kind of did my very first kind of solo album on. But like, yeah, as I say, these days, like recording music on on a computer is so easy, and so accessible, and with the streaming these days as well, like releasing music has never been easier as well. I use DistroKid as the kind of the distributor, and I've had no problems with them really. But I guess in terms of gigging, I mean, if you're a band kind of starting out and looking for gigs, I mean, I would say just connect with the other bands in your local area and kind of look for connections through them. Like again, social media, like in this day and age, social media is great for kind of finding other people doing the same kind of thing in your area and beyond as well. So if you're kind of looking for promoters and stuff, you will very easily find them by looking at other bands that you're kind of aware of in your area, and then looking at what promoters are putting them on, and then from there you can get in contact and set yourself up some gigs.
Sound advice there. Sound advice. So, as we're going to start to wrap things up, have you got any final words before we go?
I guess just thanks to anyone that's kind of taken the time to check out my music. I'm really excited about the new album Echoes, which is coming out tomorrow. In fact, it'll be on streaming services from midnight. So I'll be very excited once it hits midnight and it's available. It's been a kind of long journey, kind of leading up to this point. As I say, I started writing the songs for the album like 2 and a bit years ago. So it's been a long journey of kind of doing the writing, demoing, recording, mixing, and all the kind of release and sort of promotion stuff I've been doing over the last few months. It's been a long journey leading up to this point. But the response that I've had to the singles I've put out has been amazing. People are so supportive, and I'm really grateful for all the kind of connections I've made through releasing music, and through my social media channels people that I interact with all the time. So yeah, please just check out the album, have a listen, and hope you like it.
Yeah. So guys, if you haven't checked out Caustic Waves, I have put all the links down in the description, and Lisa and Ozzy have been posting out in the live chat there. So go check out and check out the new album. I've been listening to it today, and you'll enjoy it. You're really going to enjoy it. So it's a cracking album. So yeah, like I said, go check them out. Put all the links down in the description. And Neil, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a complete pleasure.
This has been a lot of fun. The time's absolutely flown by. Had a great time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, 50 minutes. Coming up to 50 minutes now. It's been totally enjoyable. Totally enjoyable.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So, guys, until next time, we'll catch you all later.